Hello, and a very warm welcome to Sleepy Time Stories. Are you ready to drift away into a world of dreams? Here, we leave the hustle and bustle of the day behind and embrace the tranquility of the night. Each story is a gentle journey crafted with soothing words, designed to help you relax, unwind, and find your way to a peaceful sleep. So find your favorite cozy spot, take a slow, deep breath, and let your imagination wander with me. It's time to close your eyes and let the stories begin. The golden hour was painting the sky in shades of orange and purple as I walked Max, my golden retriever, along our favorite trail. It's a path we've taken 100 times, winding through the dense woods just behind my neighborhood. Max was off-leash, happily sniffing every tree and bush, his tail wagging like a metronome set to a joyful beat. Usually, he stays close, but today his adventurous spirit got the better of him. He darted off the path, disappearing into a thicket of overgrown ferns and ancient oaks. I called his name, "Max, come on, boy," but heard only the rustle of his movement deeper into the woods. With a sigh, I pushed through the branches, following the sound. The air grew stiller, the usual forest sounds fading into an eerie silence. After a few minutes of trekking through the underbrush, I broke through into a clearing I had never seen before. And there it was. Standing before me was a house. Or what was left of one. It was a massive, two-story Victorian manor, but time had been cruel to it. The wood was gray and rotting, windows were smashed, and the entire structure sagged as if tired of standing. Ivy had claimed the walls, crawling up to the collapsed portions of the roof. A faded, barely legible sign hung crookly from a post near the skeletal remains of a gate. I could just make out the words, "Bleak Manor." A shiver ran down my spine, a mix of awe and unease. Where had this place come from? I'd lived here for years and never knew it existed. Max trotted out from behind a fallen pillar, panting happily, oblivious to the oppressive atmosphere. "You found this, didn't you, boy?" I whispered, patting his head. My curiosity was piqued. Against my better judgment, I decided to take a closer look. The front door was gone, leaving a dark, gaping maw that seemed to breathe a cold, musty air. I stepped cautiously onto the porch, the floorboards groaning under my weight. Max, however, seemed unfazed. He bounded inside, his barks echoing strangely in the cavernous space. "Max, wait!" I called, hurrying after him. Inside, the decay was even more pronounced. A grand staircase, its banister half rotted away, spiraled up into the darkness of the second floor. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light piercing through the boarded-up windows. To my left was a massive living room, a fireplace big enough to stand in, and furniture shrouded in dusty white cloths, like a congregation of silent ghosts. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth, decay, and something else, something faintly sweet like old perfume. Max was sniffing around the base of the staircase, his tail giving a low, uncertain wag. I pulled out my phone, turning on the flashlight. The beam cut through the gloom, revealing peeling wallpaper and portraits on the wall, their subjects' faces obscured by dirt and time. I walked deeper into the house, my footsteps echoing unnaturally. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind whistling through a broken pane made me jump. It felt like the house itself was watching me, holding its breath. I entered what must have been the dining room. A long, heavy table sat in the center, surrounded by overturned chairs. A chandelier, draped in cobwebs, hung precariously above it. On the table, a single place setting remained, a plate and a silver cup tarnished with age. It was a hauntingly domestic scene, a snapshot of a life abruptly ended. Why was just one place set? Suddenly, Max started growling, a low, guttural sound I'd never heard from him before. His fur was standing on end, and he was staring intently at the top of the grand staircase. I pointed my flashlight. The beam landed on the upper landing, illuminating the dark, empty space. "What is it, boy?" I whispered, my voice trembling. And then I saw it. For just a split second, a figure stood at the top of the stairs. It was a woman, or the translucent silhouette of one. She was wearing a long flowing white dress, her form shimmering in my flashlight's beam. Her face was indistinct, a pale oval in the darkness, but I could feel her gaze on me, a gaze filled with an ancient, profound sadness. My blood ran cold. I was frozen to the spot, unable to breathe, unable to scream. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, a silent sentinel in the decaying mansion. Max's growling intensified, turning into a series of sharp, panicked barks. That's what broke the spell. I grabbed his collar. "Let's go, Max! Now!" I practically dragged him, scrambling back toward the entrance. I didn't dare look back, terrified of what I might see. We burst out of the house, back into the fading twilight, gasping for air. We didn't stop running until we were back on the familiar trail, the ominous silhouette of Bleak Manor swallowed by the woods behind us. My heart was hammering against my ribs, and I could still see the image of the woman in white burned into my mind. Who was she? What happened in that house? Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I scoured the internet, searching for any information on Bleak Manor. It took some digging, but I finally found it in local archives. The manor belonged to the Bleak family, a wealthy but reclusive lineage. The last resident was a woman named Ellen Bleak. The story goes that in the late 1800s, her fiancé left her on their wedding day. Heartbroken, she refused to leave the house, waiting for his return. She died there, alone, still in her wedding dress. Locals have whispered for generations that her spirit still waits, forever trapped in her sorrow. I looked over at Max, who was sleeping peacefully at the foot of my bed. He had led me to a local legend, a ghost story made very real. A part of me is terrified, wanting to forget the whole thing, but another, larger part of me is captivated. The story of Ellen, the lonely bride of Bleak Manor, has taken hold. I feel this strange pull. I need to know more to understand her story. I know it's crazy, but I think I have to go back. All right, everyone, gather round because today I'm sharing a story that still gives me chills just thinking about it. You all know I love exploring abandoned places, right? I've been in creepy old hospitals, forgotten schools, you name it. I thought I'd seen it all. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for the Ellis estate. Even the name sounds heavy, doesn't it? It's this massive, crumbling mansion deep in the woods, miles from anywhere. The story goes that the Ellis family just vanished one day in the 1950s, left everything behind. Of course, I had to check it out. I packed my gear cameras, flashlights, the usual, and headed out. Just finding the place was an adventure. The old access road was almost completely reclaimed by nature. When I finally pushed through the overgrown brush and saw it, wow, it was both beautiful and terrifying. Ivy was strangling the stone walls. Windows were like vacant eyes staring out. It was perfection. I remember thinking, this is going to be an epic video. Famous last words, right? I stepped inside through the front door, which was surprisingly unlocked and hanging on one hinge. The air inside was thick, cold, and smelled of dust and damp decay. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and you just feel you're not welcome. It was that times 1,000. But hey, I'm an explorer. A little spooky atmosphere comes with the territory. The grand foyer was incredible. A huge sweeping staircase was covered in a carpet of dead leaves that had blown in through a broken window. Furniture was still there, draped in white cloths that looked like ghostly figures in the dim light. I started filming, narrating my usual spiel, pointing out the peeling wallpaper, the grand but tarnished chandelier hanging precariously above me. I moved into the living room. There was a massive fireplace and portraits on the wall. The eyes of the painted figures seemed to follow me. I brushed it off as my imagination running wild. I was setting up a static camera on a tripod when I heard the first noise. A faint whisper. It was so soft. I thought it was the wind. I called out the standard. Hello? Anyone here? Only silence answered back. So I continued my exploration, heading toward the dining room. And that's when things started to get really strange. I was walking down the hall, filming my feet crunching on the debris when a door to my left, a small closet door, slammed shut, hard. My heart jumped into my throat. There was no draft, no open windows in that hallway. I cautiously approached the door and tried the handle. Locked. Solid. Okay. Adrenaline was definitely pumping now. I told myself it was just an old house settling, trying to rationalize it. I went into the dining room. A long, dark wood table was set for a dinner that never happened. Plates, silverware, even glasses were still there, all coated in a thick layer of grime. It was an eerie sight. While I was filming the table, one of the glasses, a heavy crystal tumbler, slid a few inches across the tabletop, all by itself. I caught it on camera. I zoomed in, my hand shaking slightly. It just moved, my breath hitched. Okay, I said to my camera, my voice a little shaky. That was weird. But the investigator in me, the part that wants to capture this stuff, pushed me to keep going. I was scared, but I was also intrigued. I decided to head upstairs. The grand staircase creaked and groaned under my weight with every step. It felt like I was waking something up. The upstairs landing was a maze of dark doorways. I chose a room at the end of the hall, what looked like it must have been the master bedroom. It was the coldest room in the house. I could see my breath. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, landing on an old four-poster bed. And then I heard it again. That whisper. This time it was clearer. It sounded like a woman's voice, but distorted, like it was coming from far away. It whispered a single word. Get. I froze, pointing my camera in the direction of the sound. Nothing there, just shadows. I took a few steps into the room, and suddenly the wardrobe door flew open with such force that it hit the wall with a loud bang. A wave of even colder air washed over me. I stumbled back, my heart hammering against my ribs. This wasn't the house settling. This wasn't the wind. My fight-or-flight response was screaming flight, but I still had my camera rolling. I was backing out of the room when an old, ornate hairbrush flew off the vanity table and shot across the room, smashing against the wall just inches from my head. It exploded into pieces. That was it. That was my limit. I didn't even say anything to the camera. I just turned and ran. I wasn't thinking about getting cool shots anymore. I was thinking about getting out of there alive. I scrambled down the main staircase, nearly tripping several times. As I ran, I could hear noises erupting all over the house. Doors slamming, objects falling, and that horrible, distorted whispering seemed to be coming from everywhere at once. The final word I heard as I burst through the front door was a clear, angry, out. I didn't stop running until I was back at my car, fumbling for my keys with shaking hands. I threw my gear in the back, jumped in, and sped away, not looking back. I drove for an hour before I finally pulled over, my whole body trembling. When I eventually reviewed the footage, it was even more terrifying than I remembered. You can see the glass move. You can hear the door slam. You can see the brush fly past my head. And if you listen closely, with the volume turned all the way up, you can hear the whispers. I've explored dozens of places since then, but I've never experienced anything like the Ellis estate. It was different. It felt intelligent, and it felt malicious. Some places are just abandoned, but some places remember. And they don't like visitors. So that's the story. Make of it what you will. I'm just telling you what happened to me. It's a reminder that when you step into the shadows, sometimes the shadows step back. Tonight, I have a story that will send shivers down your spine, a tale of friendship, courage, and a house that refuses to let its past rest. This is the story of Harewood House and the night a group of friends decided to challenge its ghostly resident. So, dim the lights, get comfortable, and let's begin. Our story starts with four friends. Liam, the group's skeptic and leader. Maya, the history buff who knew all the local legends. Chloe, the tech-savvy one armed with cameras and EMF meters. And Ben, the self-proclaimed scaredy cat who, despite his fears, never wanted to miss out on an adventure. For years, they'd heard the whispers about Harewood House, an abandoned Georgian manor on the edge of town. Locals spoke of flickering lights, disembodied whispers, and the sorrowful figure of a woman seen gazing from the top-floor window. The legend called her the Gray Lady, a spirit said to be eternally searching for a lost locket. One crisp autumn evening, fueled by a mix of bravery and youthful recklessness, they decided to do what no one had dared to do in decades. Spend a night inside Harewood House. They packed flashlights, sleeping bags, and Chloe's ghost hunting gear, their nervous laughter echoing as they pushed open the heavy, creaking front door. The air inside was instantly colder, thick with the smell of dust and decay. Moonlight streamed through grimy windows, painting long, eerie shadows across the grand, cobweb-draped foyer. They decided to set up their base camp in the main ballroom. It was a vast, cavernous room with a once magnificent but now rotting wooden floor and a massive stone fireplace. Chloe set up her cameras while Liam tried to make light of the situation, tapping on the walls and joking, "Hello? Any ghosts home? We brought snacks." Maya, however, was more reverent, running her hand over the dusty mantelpiece. "The stories say she was Lady Eleanor, who lived here in the 1800s, she whispered. "She lost a silver locket her husband gave her, and they say her spirit can't rest until it's found." For the first few hours, everything was quiet. They shared stories, ate sandwiches, and the initial fear began to fade, replaced by a sense of disappointment. Ben was just starting to relax, even dozing off in his sleeping bag when the first strange event occurred. A single, melancholic note rang out from the dusty grand piano in the corner of the room. Their heads snapped toward the sound. No one was near it. The air grew heavy and cold again. Chloe's EMF meter, which had been silent all night, suddenly shrieked to life, its lights flashing red. "Did you guys hear that?" Ben's voice was a shaky whisper. Before anyone could answer, a soft weeping sound drifted down from the grand staircase. It was faint but unmistakable, the sound of a woman crying. Liam, ever the skeptic, grabbed his most powerful flashlight. "It's probably just the wind or an animal," he said, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "I'll go check it out." "No way are you going alone," Maya insisted, and the four of them began to slowly ascend the creaking stairs, their flashlight beams dancing nervously ahead. The second floor was a maze of dark corridors and empty rooms. The weeping sound seemed to move, leading them deeper into the house. They passed a child's nursery, where a single rocking horse began to sway back and forth on its own. They froze, hearts pounding in their chests. In another room, a bedroom with a four-poster bed, they felt a sudden, inexplicable drop in temperature that made their breath mist in the air. Chloe pointed her thermal camera at a corner of the room. On the screen, a human-shaped cold spot lingered for a moment before fading into nothing. There was no denying it now. They were not alone. The sense of being watched was overwhelming. They would hear a floorboard creak behind them, but when they turned, nothing was there. It felt less like a monstrous haunting and more like a profound sadness. They followed the intermittent sounds of sobbing to the top floor, to a small, dusty attic room. In the center of the room was a single rickety chair facing a window that overlooked the overgrown gardens. The weeping was loudest here, seeming to come from the very walls around them. "This must have been her room," Maya whispered, her historical curiosity now mixed with deep empathy. "She's not trying to scare us, I think she's just sad." As she spoke, a floorboard near the window groaned under unseen weight. They all looked as a small, glinting object, dislodged from a crack in the wood, rolled out into the moonlight. Chloe knelt and picked it up. It was a small tarnished silver locket, shaped like a heart, with the initial E engraved on it. A sudden, intense silence fell over the house. The weeping stopped. The cold dissipated. It was as if the entire manor had collectively exhaled. Chloe's EMF meter went completely dead. Holding the locket in her palm, she gently placed it on the windowsill, where the moonlight made it shine. "Here it is, Lady Eleanor," she said softly. "You can rest now." A gentle breeze seemed to stir through the room, brushing against their faces like a grateful sigh, before everything went still once more. The rest of the night was profoundly peaceful. The oppressive atmosphere was gone, replaced by a calm stillness. They didn't sleep much, not out of fear, but out of a sense of awe and reverence for what they had just experienced. They sat together in the ballroom, talking in hushed tones. The silver locket resting on the mantelpiece above the fireplace, a silent testament to the night's events. They hadn't just survived a night in a haunted house. They had helped a lost soul find peace. As the first rays of dawn broke through the dirty windows, they packed up their things in silence. The house no longer felt menacing. It just felt empty. As they stepped outside into the fresh morning air, they turned for one last look at Harewood House. For a fleeting second, Liam swore he saw a faint, shimmering figure of a woman in the top-floor window, not weeping, but smiling, before she faded away with the morning mist. They never went back to Harewood House, but the story of that night bonded them forever. They had faced their fears together and come out the other side with a story that no one would ever believe, but that they would never forget. It taught them that not all spirits are malevolent. Some are just lost, waiting for a little kindness to help them find their way. Thank you so much for listening to our story tonight. It just goes to show that sometimes the most frightening places hold the most poignant stories. When I first saw the old Caldwell place, I didn't see the peeling paint or the skeletal remains of a garden. I saw potential. My name is Jake, and I've always had a thing for bringing old things back to life. This house, a sprawling two-story Victorian on the edge of town, was my masterpiece in waiting. It was a steal, of course. The real estate agent practically sprinted away after I signed the papers, muttering something about the place having character. I just laughed. A little character was exactly what I was looking for. I spent the first week just clearing out the junk. Decades of dust, forgotten furniture, and the kind of silence that feels heavy. That's when I first noticed it. My tools wouldn't stay where I left them. I'd put my hammer down on a workbench, turn my back for a second, and it would be on the floor across the room. I blamed it on a slanted foundation, my own forgetfulness. But it kept happening. A tape measure would unspool itself. A can of paint would be nudged just enough to spill. It was annoying, but I brushed it off. Then came the cold spots. One minute I'd be sweating while prying up floorboards, and the next, a pocket of air so cold it felt like stepping into a freezer would envelop me. It was the middle of July. There was no explanation. I'd checked the windows, the vents, anything to explain it, but there was nothing. The feeling would be there for a moment, raising goosebumps on my arms, and then it would vanish as quickly as it came. That's when the first real seed of doubt, that little whisper of what if, began to sprout. The whispers started soon after, faint at first, like the wind whistling through a keyhole. I'd be sanding a door frame, the only sound the steady rasp of the paper against wood, and I'd hear a faint sigh. A murmur. I'd stop, listen, and hear nothing but the house creaking around me. I told myself it was just the old house settling, my ears playing tricks on me in the quiet. But the whispers grew more distinct. They sounded like a grumpy old man muttering to himself. Wrong nail. That's not level. In my day we used oak. One evening I was up late, trying to patch a particularly stubborn bit of plaster in the master bedroom. I was frustrated, tired, and covered in white dust. I muttered to myself, "This is impossible." From the corner of the room, a clear, raspy voice replied, "You're using the wrong trowel, you nincompoop." I froze, my heart pounding against my ribs. I slowly turned, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The room was empty, but I had heard it. Clear as a bell. There was someone else here. Or something else. That's how I officially met Gerald. He didn't introduce himself, of course. I'd pieced his name together from old letters I found in a dusty trunk in the attic, addressed to a Mr. Gerald Caldwell. He, it turned out, was the original owner and builder of the house. And he was not impressed with my restoration efforts. He became my spectral supervisor, a ghostly backseat driver for my own project. Every decision I made was met with a critical, disembodied comment. "That color is atrocious. Don't you know how to measure twice and cut once? You're letting a draft in through that window frame, you amateur." At first, it was unnerving. Then it became infuriating. I started talking back. "Well, Gerald," I'd shout at the empty air, "it's my house now, and I like this color." I'd get a huffy sigh in response, or maybe a door would slam shut down the hall. We argued constantly. He'd hide my tools when he was particularly displeased. One time, my brand new power saw just vanished. I found it 3 days later in the bathtub. I yelled at the ceiling for a solid 10 minutes. I heard what sounded suspiciously like a ghostly chuckle, but a strange thing started to happen. Amidst the criticism, there was help. I was struggling to fit a complex piece of crown molding, getting the angles all wrong. After my third failed attempt, I threw the piece on the floor in disgust. I left the room to cool off, and when I came back, the piece of wood was sitting on the workbench, with a faint shimmering line drawn exactly where I needed to cut. I followed the spectral guideline, and it fit perfectly. I stood back, stunned. Thanks, Gerald, I mumbled to the empty room. A faint, grudging, was my only reply. Slowly, our dynamic shifted from adversarial to a bizarre sort of partnership. He knew every secret of the house. He'd make a tapping sound on a wall to show me where a hidden structural beam was. A cold spot would hover over a floorboard that was about to give way. His grumbling became less about my incompetence and more about a shared goal. No, the support goes there, he'd insist, his voice echoing from the rafters. And he was always right. I started to rely on his spectral expertise. We were restoring the house together. The day I finished the last room, the kitchen, I put the final coat of varnish on the restored hardwood floors. The house was beautiful. It gleamed with new life, but it still held all its old charm. I stood in the doorway, admiring our work. The air was still, and for the first time, truly quiet. There were no whispers, no cold spots, no grumbling. A feeling of melancholy washed over me. Well, Gerald, I said softly to the room. We did it. For a long moment, there was nothing. Then, a warmth spread through the room, the complete opposite of the icy spots I'd grown used to. It felt like a warm, sunny afternoon. And in the quiet, I heard his voice one last time, no longer raspy or critical, but soft and filled with something that sounded like pride. It's a good house, he said. And then he was gone. I knew, deep down, that he was finally at peace. He wasn't haunting the house, he was protecting it. He was just waiting for someone who cared about it as much as he did. I still live here. It's no longer the Caldwell place. It's our place. And every now and then, when I'm fixing something, I still measure twice and cut once, just in case he's watching. Thank you so much for joining me on this story today. Have you ever had a feeling that something is too good to be true? That's exactly how we felt the day we first saw Holybank House. It was perfection. A sprawling old Victorian with ivy climbing the stone walls in a garden that looked like something out of a storybook. For me, my partner, and our 2 kids, it was everything we'd ever wanted. We'd saved for years, dreaming of a place with character, a place with history. Holybank House had that in spades. The real estate agent mentioned it was a local landmark, a place everyone in the village knew. We thought that was charming. We had no idea what charming really meant. The first few weeks were pure bliss. We were unpacking boxes, laughing as our voices echoed in the high-ceilinged rooms. The kids, Leo and Mia, immediately claimed the attic as their secret hideout. It was dusty and filled with forgotten trinkets, but to them, it was a treasure trove. Life felt idyllic. The sun streamed through the large bay windows. The birds sang in the ancient oak tree outside. We finally found our home. The strange occurrences started small, so small you could easily dismiss them. A door creaking shut on its own? Just the house settling, we'd say. The faint sound of footsteps from the floor above when we were all downstairs? Probably just the pipes. But then things got a little harder to explain away. My partner's favorite coffee mug, the one that always sat on the third hook, would be on the counter. Keys we'd left on the hallway table would turn up in the fruit bowl. One evening, I was making dinner and heard a faint, melodic humming coming from the living room. I poked my head in, expecting to see Mia, but the room was empty. The humming stopped the second I looked. I called out to the kids, but they were upstairs, deeply engrossed in a board game. A shiver went down my spine, but I brushed it off. An old house makes old noises, right? The kids were the first to give him a name. Mr. Frank is playing hide-and-seek again, Mia announced one morning at breakfast. We asked who Mr. Frank was. Lio explained, with all the seriousness a 7-year-old can muster, that he was the quiet man who lived in the attic. He said Mr. Frank liked to move their toys around and sometimes turn the pages of their books when they weren't looking. We smiled, thinking it was just a cute, imaginative game. We even played along. Well, tell Mr. Frank to put my car keys back where he found them, I'd joke. We had no idea how real Mr. Frank was about to become. The turning point came on a stormy Tuesday night. The wind was howling and rain was lashing against the windows. We were all huddled in the living room watching a movie when the power flickered and died. We lit some candles, trying to make an adventure out of it. That's when we heard it. A clear, distinct sound from upstairs. It wasn't a creak or a groan. It was the sound of a single slow note being played on the old out-of-tune piano in the landing. None of us moved. We just stared at each other, our faces pale in the candlelight. The kids weren't scared. They were curious. "It's Mr. Frank," whispered Leo. "He wants to play for us." That night, my partner and I decided we couldn't ignore it anymore. The next day, we went to the local library and started digging into the history of Holy Bank House. It didn't take long to find him. Franklin Albright, or Mr. Frank, as the old newspaper clippings called him. He was a music teacher who had lived and taught in the house a century ago. He was a beloved local figure, known for his gentle nature and his love of children. The article said he passed away peacefully in his sleep, right there in the house. There were no horror stories, no dark secrets. He simply loved his home so much that apparently he never left. Learning about Mr. Frank changed everything. The fear we'd been feeling slowly started to fade, replaced by a strange sense of companionship. We weren't being haunted. We were sharing our home. The mischievous pranks continued, but now we'd laugh about them. When a book fell off a shelf, we'd say, "Looks like Mr. Frank has a recommendation for us." When we heard the faint humming, we'd hum along. We realized he wasn't trying to scare us. He was just lonely, a quiet spirit trying to connect in the only ways he knew how. He was a part of the house's history, and now he was a part of our family story. We stopped trying to explain it to people. How do you tell someone your house is cohabited by a friendly 100-year-old ghost? Instead, we embraced it. The kids would leave drawings for Mr. Frank in the attic. Sometimes they'd swear a new, small object, like a pretty stone or a shiny button, would appear next to their drawings the following day. My partner, a musician himself, even started leaving sheet music on the piano. On quiet nights, we'd sometimes hear a few hesitant notes being played, as if someone was trying to remember an old tune. It was beautiful. Living in Holy Bank House taught us that not all ghost stories have to be scary. Sometimes a house with history just has a little more soul. Mr. Frank wasn't a phantom to be feared. He was a gentle echo of a life well lived, a permanent resident who just wanted some company. We bought a house, but we ended up with a home, complete with its own unique unseen family member. And honestly, we wouldn't have it any other way. We still live here, and yes, Mr. Frank is still with us. He's the quiet hum in the hallway, the misplaced teacup, the phantom note on the piano. He's the spirit of Holy Bank House. Thanks for listening to our strange little story. And that's a wrap for today's video. A huge thank you to every single one of you for hanging out with me. I really hope you enjoyed it and maybe even learned something new. If you did, it would mean the world to me if you could give this video a big thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know what kind of content you want to see more of. And hey, if you're new here and want to join our awesome community, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss out on any of our future adventures. Got any questions or just want to say hi? Drop a comment down below. I love hearing from you all. Thanks again for your amazing support. Until next time, take care and stay awesome.